spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples today. Welcome to Totally Lit, the podcast celebrating reading, writing and creating literature. I'm your host, Ky Garvey. Thank you for listening. I have the very talented Leo Baker joining me this episode. Working in the film and animation industry in Australia and overseas for the last 20 years, Leo has explored storytelling through a variety of mediums. Leo was a key creative and the sole animator of the Academy Award-winning film adaptation of The Lost Thing by Sean Tan. He also animated The Spider on the film adaptation of Charlotte's Web. In 2011, Leo was awarded a Winston Churchill Fellowship to research animation industries around the world. Leo wrote and directed The Will to Fly, an empowering documentary about Australian Olympic champion aerial skier Lydia Lucila. Leo recently created the visual effects for the ABC Kids series Planet Lulin. He is writing 2 feature film screenplays and structuring a potential sequel to Tuckshop Terrors. Leo gives talks in schools through Booked Out Speakers Agency. And aside from being a big foodie, some of his personal interests include furniture making, print making, cinema and surfing. I hope you enjoy our chat. Leo Baker, welcome to Totally Lit. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Now, we're going to chat today about your latest release, Tuckshop Terrors. Can you tell me a bit about the book?
Absolutely. It is my latest release, but it is also my first release.
Yes.
It is my debut novel. Yeah, it's a middle grade action mystery fiction for really like the sweet spot is for kids between 10 and 14 years old. Or if I like to say for anyone that has the big kid within,
Yes.
which I definitely fall in that category. And it is, do you want me to give you a little breakdown?
If you can give me a little synopsis of the story, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So it's about a country kid named Kip who's trying to fit into a new school in a new town and make new friends. And this school has an amazing canteen that's far more elaborate and exotic compared to his previous school. It also has a bit of a weird headmaster and some bullies, and so there's a little bit of adjustment. And the first day is a bit rocky, and he was anxious about fitting in on the first day. And he manages to make 2 friends. He makes friends with a bit of a ratbag kid named Reggie, who's a lot of fun, and then a girl named Lucille, who is the only one like him that has homemade lunches. And so it's revealed in the story that Kip is a character with diabetes who he has to be very careful about monitoring his food intake and managing his sugar levels and that kind of thing. So his parents, being conscious of that, are quite adamant that he has homemade lunches rather than eating food that they sort of have no control over. And the character Lucille has an Italian nonna who makes her these beautiful meals. And so the two of them form a bit of a bond, having lunch together out in the Oval when everyone else is eating this amazing food in at the canteen. And Kip secretly kind of longs to eat that delicious junk food. I remember what it was like when I was younger, and I was always longing to eat the.
Is that because you have type 1 diabetes yourself, Leo?
No, I don't. I actually had a really good friend who actually sadly passed from type 1 diabetes, which was not
Sorry to hear
necessarily,
that.
it was not a motivation for writing the story, but it was a nice little kind of link to my friend because I wanted to write a story all about food. And I thought, well, I want my character to have a wound or a weakness or, some kind of setback associated with food. And I thought, well, that actually ties in really well. And I also worked with someone whose son, they suddenly discovered that he had type 1 diabetes and it was a real stressful drama. And I kind of thought, oh, that would be very tough. And thought there isn't really many stories out there about kids like that. So I thought I very carefully did my research because I don't want to have any information in there that is not correct. And so, I researched this and fact checked everything and so that what I was presenting was kind of accurate. But surrounding this, I always call it the tuck shop. It was a tuck shop when I was growing up.
Yep,
but
that's what we called it as well.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, I in the story I've referred to as a canteen because these kids today refer to it as the canteen or the
Yeah,
uh,
I remember moving from Queensland to Victoria when I was a little girl, well, 11, 12, and starting my first year of high school. And at that school, they called it the CAF.
oh,
So, and yeah, just those changes from one state to another. It's like you have to quickly adapt
that's
to the
interesting. Yeah.
change. Yeah.
I
Um,
did I did a few talks in schools for some other projects that I've been doing, and I asked the kids because I was writing Tuckshop Terrors at the time, and I was like, what do you call the lunchroom where you go to have lunch or where you buy food from at lunchtime?" And a lot of kids said, "Oh, they just said, oh, the canteen." I said, "You would never
mm.
call it a tuck shop?" And they're like, "Never heard of that." I was like, "Ah, darn it."
And where are
And
you based, Lee? Are you in Victoria?
I'm in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I think all over Australia, there's
it is. Yeah,
different
but
schools call it different things.
I think it's actually a link to the UK. It's a very English thing.
Mm.
They say tuck shop over there. So there's a few little like food like lunchtime food trucks that are called tuck shop,
Mm.
like so and so's tuck shop or mobile tuck shop or something like that. So and, oh, it's funny actually. You mentioned, did you say Queensland before?
Yeah, so I'm based in Queensland now, but I've kind of lived in both Victoria and Queensland through my life. Yeah.
Right, because I um actually someone reached out to me from the Queensland. It was like the Queensland Society of Tuck Shops or the Organization of
Oh,
Tuck Shops
okay.
or something. And I was like, wow, I mean, I had no idea there was an organization for tuck shops across Queensland. And yeah, I certainly hope they follow through and continue with their interest in the book. But I found that quite interesting. So anyway, my continuing with my synopsis of the story, I'm waffling on a little bit here, so I
That's
apologize.
okay.
There's a series of weird events that happen after lunch, and Kip and Lucille are kind of like the odd ones out. And they sort of discover that there's, because of these mysterious events, there's a bit of a mystery to solve. And they soon discover that there is a link between, there's a food corporation beside the school.
Hmm.
There's a link between the weird events and the food corporation, which
Oh,
gives
okay.
which gives them more clues. I'm trying to kind of reveal story without too many spoilers here.
Yes.
Then this food corporation sponsors the town Fate, and they realize that there is a scheme emerging that is more complex and sinister than they perhaps
Right.
anticipated. And all hell breaks loose, and it is up to Kip and Lucille to go on a quest to free their friends and family from all that fictional, zany, monstrous
Amazing.
fun.
And have you been getting any responses from kids or parents who have type 1 diabetes? Like, I personally think it's really important for kids to see themselves in the books
Yeah,
that they're reading.
I think so. Not as yet. I actually have been meaning to. I've actually been extremely busy. It's always funny. I've spent so long leading up to the release of this book, and as it has been released, I have been extremely busy,
Mm.
which sounds like a lame excuse, but I have actually been very busy, and I've been meaning to follow through with more kind of connection to Diabetes Australia and to make them aware that there's this story that kids can use and see themselves in. I actually one of the people who I got, a friend of mine, Louis, who has type 1 diabetes, been working with him. And when I first met him, which wasn't actually that long ago, we met up and I got a beer and he said, "Oh no, I won't have a beer." And then he explained that he had diabetes and it wreaks havoc. He can't, having
Mm.
alcohol is very problematic. So I was like, oh no, that's cool. Like I kind of understood because I had this other friend and these other stories. And so then I like I was actually into meeting him to kind of get to know him about working with him with this particular project. I had some additional work I needed his help with. And I ended up just sort of having this interview quizzing him on type 1 diabetes. And he was extremely generously forthcoming with a lot of information. And then I actually got him to fact check the sections that I had
Mm.
written. And I actually, at the sort of the last minute, not actually far out from publishing, there were a couple of minor things that I maybe just got like back to front on a couple of things, which I'm very
Mm.
glad I got right. But then he actually gave me some like little personal bits and pieces, like of what he referred to as his blood sugar monitor. He called it his checky thingy.
Yep.
And I thought that's kind of a nice little thing. I'm going to add that in there. Kip refers to his checky thingy. And I thought that was kind of sweet. It kind of makes it a little more real and more personalized.
Yeah, I
Um,
can imagine it's really challenging, especially as a young person, to be restricted in your foods in that way, especially when you're seeing everybody else just
yeah,
going to the canteen and buying whatever they want. And even when you, as you transition to an adult, those things like just having a beer with your mates when you turn 18 are not there for you. Um,
exactly. And I mean, nowadays, like everywhere you go, whether it's, I mean, I suppose it's been like that for a while, but I mean, nowadays it's TV and social media and everything is so saturated with endless marketing of products and
mm,
things just in your face all the time. And there is so much crap, junk food,
yeah.
really in
And
everyone's.
even that having a happy meal as a treat kind of things, like when your children are little, they can't understand why they shouldn't have it
Mm,
when they're seeing all their friends have
yeah,
that. And then there's that motivation of collecting the toy and
yeah.
all that sort of thing. And it's really not that healthy, but
Even
part
when I
of
was
childhood.
even when I was younger, like just even like I was just such a fiend for cereal.
Mm.
Like all of
It's
the
so full of sugar.
was never allowed to have the Cocoa Pops or Fruit Loops or all those ones that are just loaded with sugar. And they always had toys in them and stuff like that, which was, just such an amazing dangling carrot to want
Mm.
to buy it to get the cheap plastic toy. Uh, and I remember going to America when I was younger, and it's even more full on there. It's just like there's so many different sugary cereals, and they're all colorful packaging, and they're all vying for your attention on the shelves. And I just think like as a kid, you just sort of like, wow, that's so amazing. And I was actually, because I work in film and animation, I was
Hmm.
fortunate enough to go to Pixar Animation Studio once, and they have
That would have been
because
amazing.
because they're all big kids
Yep.
who work there. They've got an amazing canteen cafeteria that serves amazing, beautiful food. They've got full-time chefs that work there. But then they've actually got a room that is open 24/7 that is just cereal.
Oh my goodness.
So there's just like every cereal you can imagine because they know that all these animation people are all just big kids. They will
Yep.
go and eat cereal at any time of the day.
Mm.
And I kind of secretly love that.
That's
So
kind of a cool window into the Pixar studios. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah, I
Um,
actually had heard about it in advance, but when I went there, I'm like, oh, that's the cereal room. It's so amazing.
uh, exciting. Now, do you want to share a bit about your experience in the filmmaking world?
Yeah. So yeah, I've worked in the film industry in different sort of areas for over 20 years, nearly 25 years. I started working in camera department, which was really interesting. I learned a lot of the fundamentals. I worked on a lot of TV commercials and a couple of big movies and one TV series actually. And I kind of really learnt the ropes, as they say, of how the on set works, how things operate. And then I remember I was working on some TV commercials that were doing some really cutting edge stuff with visual effects. And I did all art subjects at school, so I did a
Hmm.
lot of graphics. And I remember watching, and I had been learned always kept up to date with computer stuff and computer graphics to a degree. And I saw them doing all this stuff for the visual effects on this TV commercial. And I was like, wow, okay, that's what I would really be interested in doing. And so I kind of sidestepped and went into working in visual effects. And having a background knowledge working in camera department was really beneficial to
Mm.
that. But then in the world of visual effects, there's a lot of uh, 2D compositing work. There is some you use 3D software for
Yep.
doing 3D character animation or making 3D objects for all the visual augmentation that you do for different. You can kind of do anything as far as your imagination can extend. You can then recreate that visually to whatever you want to make, really, which I thought was endlessly creative. But I kind
Mm.
of also discovered that it was, whilst yes, it is essentially extremely creative, it is also endlessly technical. And
Yep.
so I've always said that well, I am a very creative person, and I saw that as a window to doing amazing creative things. And I did do many creative things, but I found that I was becoming extremely bogged down in technical
Yeah.
learning. So learning all the software, and it's like a black hole. It is endless. There's endless learning. Some of the people I know work in visual effects now, they're so amazing what they can do, and they have incredible knowledge of artistic knowledge, but then some people have incredible maths brains and like computer science brains, and they write their own software and all this incredible problem solving and engineering, which is all to me very exciting, that left and right brain kind of stuff. But I really felt that during that whole time, I was losing track with my creative side, and I
Mm.
kind of actually had to find it again. And whilst working in visual effects, I actually kind of mainly specialized in working with the animation team. So we'll do 3D animation, and we
Yep.
worked on quite a lot of different movies doing 3D character animation. So we did the spider for Charlotte's Web,
Oh,
the
that's cool.
3D spider.
And interesting that it's so drilled down that you were just working on that piece of animation as well.
Yeah, and it becomes very focused. You have your allocated shots, and there was room for creativity eventually. Getting the performance of the character animation in there. So it wasn't all technical nuts and bolts, but I I just had ideas that I wanted to express, and
Hmm.
then I was getting a little stagnant and frustrated working in visual effects. So I actually came back to Melbourne, and I worked on a short animated film called The Lost Thing,
Hmm.
which was an adaptation of Sean Tan's picture storybook, the Lost Thing. That was a real labor of love because it took a best part of 3 years, and it was just me and one other guy who worked remotely from Scotland. So it was a little bit of a lonely working
Mm.
existence to a degree, but it was something that I really believed in, and I thought, well, I can actually use the skills that I have and put a lot more creative energy into bringing this to life. But I guess through that process of the different projects that I worked on, I saw that Charlotte's Web and The Lost Thing are adaptations from the written form from
Mm.
books originally, and then working in film, I worked on multiple films that were based I knew originated from novels, and so I thought, well, I've got ideas. I've got
Mm.
ideas to share. And it's one thing to sort of say you've got ideas and to talk about it, but you kind of just need to do it. You need to get on with it. And I remember when I went overseas to America, because the Lost Thing was extremely successful. I actually won an Academy Award in 2011. Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then the after then people become very interested in you, and I met with many people in America, and the first thing they ask is like, well, what do you have? And I'd say, well, I've got this idea, this thing I want to do. And it's just sort of like, you can see their eyes just glaze over a minute. Like,
Mm.
no one cares. No one cares unless you have something to show. And so I thought, well, what's the fastest way in which I can convey my ideas? I thought if I write my ideas as as a as a screenplay, which I love the screenplay format. I mean, I'm currently writing other screenplays.
Mm.
But if I write it as a screenplay, it could potentially just stay parked as a screenplay on someone's desk unread or read. And there's a lot
Yes.
of dependencies to get that up and running into a production to be made.
Well,
And
even if you get a lot of interest, it can sit for like take years for someone to actually take it to the next step as well.
exactly. And I thought to myself, well, what is it that I really want? Do I want this to be, do I specifically want to make an animated film? Or do I want people to be able to experience my ideas of fictional development? I thought, well, it's actually about being able to express my ideas of fictional development. So I thought, well, I can strip away a lot of the dependencies by just writing it as a novel, because the only dependencies is me and a writing program. And sure, I've got to get it out into the world, and that's kind of the main challenge I'm working with now, is the promotion and the marketing of it, and getting people to read it. And that can be a slow burn, but at least I can have something. I go, here, read this, and then
Well,
from
I would
time.
recommend, I don't know if you've heard of the DANS Awards and the Foreverability Awards. They're both book awards that support diversity in writing, so that they might be places that you can send your book to. to get a
Right.
little bit of traction as well. But I think they're both next year now. But certainly that you've got that theme of type 1 diabetes in there, I think that could be a place to send
Great.
your book to, or to enter it into those style of awards as another way to get some visuals on the book.
Yeah.
And can I ask you how much of your experience with filmmaking and working in that industry affected how you wrote Tuckshop Terrors? Did you write it envisaging that eventually it'll be adapted into like a series or a movie or something like that?
Perhaps. I mean, yes, perhaps. I mean, originally the idea I wanted it to be a movie concept. So I think as I wrote it, I was very much in that headspace.
Mhm.
But also, like I think very visually.
Yep.
So when I'm thinking of, a scene, someone comes into a room, like some writers just think about plot points or they think of just about dialogue. But I think about, well, what does the room look like? What does the environment look like? What props are they holding? What are they wearing? Like all this detail, I really visualize it. So it was actually really nice being able to do more descriptive writing and I suppose to indulge in some of that because you actually are very limited with that in screenwriting.
Mm.
And so I thought, well, this is kind of handy because I can be the cinematographer, I can be the production designer, I can wear these other hats in this and be the auteur crafting the overall kind of impression. Because I feel like a good book, ones that do get adapted to the screen later, some people go, oh, that was rubbish. That was nothing like what I imagined it. And it's very open to interpretation because everyone has their own vision of what they read. But then sometimes they really get it right. And people are like, wow, that was a really fantastic adaptation. That's exactly how I imagined it. And that's really exciting, I think, when that happens. And so I kind of, yes, I thought about it visually and I really wanted to kind of portray that through the writing. But
And
I
do
also
you already have it adapted into a script, or is that another job ahead of you?
Oh, I've got a couple of big supporters of the project that are hassling me all the time. It's like when are you gonna have the screenplay? Let's make it. And so it's one thing I have to get around to. But I have had a couple of people who read drafts of it when I was getting close to the final draft of it, and they said that it read a bit like a screenplay at times because it's quite
Mm.
dialogue heavy and like a lot of the dialogue drives screenplays are often driven by a lot of dialogue.
Yep.
And I guess I enjoyed that. But I think that's one of the things is like once you know who the characters are, you'll be like, oh well, what would Lucille say here? Well, she'd say this, and then Reggie would then come with a little quip, and then you sort of you can kind of paint this world and have the dialogue flowing, and it's comes quite naturally, and it's I think that's exciting when it gets to that stage.
And do you want to tell me about Loaf Books?
Well, Loaf Books is my little publishing imprint that I established to release Tuckshop Terrors, and I hope that there are more on the little imprint. I the
Was
reason
there a decision why you decided to create your own imprint to publish, or was it that you wanted more to have control over the project?
I spent quite some time waiting for submissions and publishers to read it, and
It's unbearable the
I don't
waiting.
I don't I don't want to sound like I'm having a bitch or a moan on here, but I thought this project is going to die on a hard drive unless I empower myself and get it out into the world.
Mm.
Because I was just, the sand was going through the hourglass of time. And it's like, I want this project out there. It's ready. It's good. I've had so many people just say, like, get on with it. Why haven't you released it? And I'm like, well, I keep going to release it. And then someone will be like, oh, this is great. Surely this publisher will, his reach out to this person. And I just wait. And it would just be, I don't know if it's the current climate of the publishing world, or if publishing world is just looking for very specific marketable things. I'm a little fish. I'm an unknown in the publishing world. Maybe that's probably the main thing. I don't know. I don't want to be presumptive or sound,
I
you know.
think there's a combination of things at the moment that it's difficult to get published. Especially the children's market is very small. And I think it isn't necessarily about the quality of work or anything like that. It's just that publishers can only accept this amount this year.
Yeah,
Um, and so you can be sending really quality pieces of work in, but not getting any traction.
yeah. I I'd kind of also I just got a bit sick of feeling like I was trying to fit in with the plan and the agenda of somebody else, and so I just thought, well, look, I'll find ways of connecting this to readers and enjoy that process. It'd be a little bit of extra legwork, but at the end of the day, I actually don't think it's that much extra legwork. I think you have to promote something whether somebody else publishes it or
Mm.
you publish it.
How
And
did
then
you find that experience of learning how to set up an imprint yourself?
I've got to give credit to my mum there. My mum
Mm.
is an artist. She's a writer and illustrator, and she's released five, six children's picture storybooks. And I think they're absolutely brilliant. Her name's Felicity Marshall, and
Okay,
check out her work at felicitymarshall.com.
I'm gonna
Um,
Google as we
and
speak.
she has she's done picture storybooks for other authors and for other and publishers, like large publishing houses and smaller publishing houses. And then she got to the point where she was wanting to self-publish her own works. And she did that for the last two books that she's done because, again, it just everything kind of ground to a halt. And it was taking a long time to get, after a while, if you don't sort of get feedback or responses from publishers, it feels like you're waiting for validation.
Mm,
And you don't want to get into that territory because then it just becomes a negative thought process, and
yes.
it's very counterintuitive to the whole reason why you embarked on this pursuit. So
It
I
is a
saw,
challenging process as well because you get a lot of no's in relation to the yeses, and it can be trying to stay resilient and strong through that process as well when really the end goal is to get the art out into the world,
yeah,
and you don't want to just end up not sharing your work because you haven't found the right home for it yet. It can be a challenge just to stay strong and resilient and just go, okay, that was a no. It didn't give me any information as to why it was a no, just other than it's not for us at this time. And then you're left sort of nursing yourself as you.
I know. And people are time poor. They don't want to give you a full breakdown of the
Yeah.
reasons and things. And
Mm,
on one hand, I really understand, but I kind of, frustration does creep in, and then it's like, well, I can get crappy about this, or I can just get on with it. And I saw my mum just get on with it, and she
mm,
self-published these books, and she did. Unfortunately, one of the releases was like just at the beginning or in the middle of COVID, and it
mm.
was very challenging. But the books have had really nice traction, and they continue to be printed and distributed. And I think I learned a lot from her that, like, you can establish your own imprint, and you can get the book printed, and then it's about connecting with bookstores, but also schools and libraries, and so
Mm.
having adequate distribution on board to assist with that process. And that's just a business relationship. And I had see I was a little hesitant at first because I have self-distributed a film before, and that was a lot of work.
Mm.
Trying to get it into cinemas and across the country. That was quite an uphill battle to do that, and it was very exhausting. But then I thought, well, if I was able to do that with a film, I'll be able to do it with a book. And I'd seen how she had done it, and I kind of had learnt from that. And the thing that's different about the book world compared to the film world is you distribution in film is kind of like is one, you make a film and you distribute it. But in the book world, there's like a publisher and a distributor. So a publisher,
Yes.
gets it published and gets it to distribution point, and then a distributor. So it's kind of like a two layered
Mm.
process. So as a self publisher, I could still get a distributor, and so I was like, oh well, that's really different, and I'm able to connect with
That's
audiences.
handy, I think, because I'm traditionally published. I have one picture book, and I love my publisher, and they did a really good job of distribution for me. But you can't then do too much yourself in terms of you don't want to step on people's toes, and you want to be respectful to your publisher. So you can't necessarily, if they haven't got those relationships, it's not always, you don't want to step on one relationship in one direction to build another one in
Yeah.
another direction. And so sometimes you can't, even though you dearly love your book to be in places that you want, you don't necessarily get that choice. So having a bit of control over your book must be a lot of work, but also a bit rewarding as well, that you can have a bit of freedom.
Yeah. I think the type of person I am, like I'm not afraid of rolling up the sleeves and getting on with a bit of extra work to get things done if it means I'm able to kind of have the satisfaction of connecting to where I want the book
Mm.
to be seen or read or
So it
um
sounds like that even though you've got lots of contacts in the filmmaking industry, that you really need to build a whole new set of contacts in the publishing industry. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I think it is fair to say that. Yeah. I I feel like I feel like I have some good connections and some adequate connections in the film space in particularly in Australia, but it doesn't necessarily translate across. I mean,
Mm,
I would meet people, I'd send my like two pager with my little bio and say, hey, these are all the things that I've done, and they're somewhat affiliated creatively and thematically with the publishing world. But I feel like it just didn't land, and I don't
mm.
know if that's an Australian thing. I feel like it could be. I'm not sure, but it's like I don't know. I feel like everyone's really just really it's hard to recoup costs. And so
Mm,
it's like if someone is going to invest in your product, which is really what it is, they want to know that they're going to recoup their costs and you're going to have a sellable item. And I understand the economics of that, but I mean, you know, everything's run by accountants these days, and it's just a
I think it
little
must
bit
be
of
a
the
lot of
romance gets
pressure
lost.
to be a person working within a publisher, because if you've selected a few books to be published and then they haven't sold well,
Yeah,
it's
it
a
would
bit
be
like,
tough.
oh, I haven't got the greatest track record at the moment. I think I would find that really stressful.
Oh, it'd be brutal. It'd be brutal. And then you kind of yeah, I would hate to be making that decision. So I kind of thought, oh well, if I do it myself and then I fail dismally, well, I've only got myself to blame. So
Yeah, yeah. And I have to admit that in my life, I like with the podcast, I love that I can record when I want, I can talk about what I want, I connect with the authors and publishers that I want to chat to, and I don't feel any restrictions on how I program the show. But within my work life, it's a different kettle of fish in that you've got to answer to somebody else and be meeting your KPIs and all that sort of thing. And I'm
sure.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I work so much better when I only have to answer to myself, um,
Yeah.
and have a
I
lot
know
more
that.
confidence in it. Whereas at work, I'm like, oh, am I going to make the wrong decision? But yeah, I think eventually I would love to be working in a creative space where I was just writing and podcasting. But it's like the dream of all creatives to be able to just do the thing you love. So,
Well, it's funny, like in terms of that kind of balance, I've figured out in the last few years, I feel there's like three different tiers of work. There's like tier A is kind of like just working to earn a living, and you might be working on this is like I work freelance a lot of the time, so this
mm,
is how I've been thinking. So you work on, I might work on some corporate thing, and it's horrid. I don't care for it, and whatever. I'm like, it's just pays well. I'll do it. Money earned. And then there's like the next tier is working on stuff that's interesting and really dynamic and stimulating, and it uses your creative skill and you gets the most out of you, and you can kind of it's a nice symbiosis between your skill set and the material you're working on. And then the third one is your own material, where you can eventually be paid to do your own thing. And it's like you can't just stay in one and then promote yourself to the next one.
mm,
You actually have to have the money simultaneously. So if you are just making money, you have to make sure that you have enough time to work on category C, which is your own material. So keep chipping away at that. So you get it to a point where it's actually you can then release it, which is pretty much what I've done with Tuckshop Terrors. That was just a side thing I would do in my spare
Mm.
time. And now I can't remember exactly what I'm working on right now, but I'm doing something really exciting, and it's in that B category where it's really stimulating work. I'm working for someone else, but it's using my skill set, and it's very satisfying and
Mm.
enjoyable. And so it's kind of a nice, you can kind of, if you understand those three sort of layers of work you can do, it makes it a little bit more manageable. But then you always need to be mindful of chipping away at the stuff that really matters
Mm.
to you. So I think if you leave it to like one day, I'll do that one day, whenever you have to pull that one day forward and make that one day today or
Mm.
tomorrow.
Now, I've got a few questions for you that are just fun questions for us to get to know you a little bit better. So these are my quick fire questions.
Yeah.
Can you tell me your favorite book growing up?
Well, when I was younger, I really loved the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe
Mm.
books,
Yeah.
the seven books, I believe. Yeah, seven. That whole series. And looking back at them now, they're actually really quite small books. They're not as big as I remember them. I mean, I read them when I was pretty young. I I just like, as all those books went on, they'd have all these portals into Narnia, and they kind of skipped in and out of the real world and Narnia.
Mm.
And I just used to imagine that there would be somewhere, there would be a portal and I would be able to get into Narnia. And I
Oh,
just,
wouldn't that be great?
yeah,
Just need to take a break from the real world. Although
yeah.
I think there's just as many stresses in Narnia than there are out in the real world.
Well, yeah, of course.
Now, if you could be any book character, who would it be?
Oh, it's like, this is a tough one. Because you gave me a little heads up on these questions, so I've been pondering these answers. I really loved the book that well, there's many answers I can give here, but I'll give one. There was a book that I read by Gary Paulson, a book called Hatchet,
Hmm.
uh, which is about a boy who crash lands in a light airplane in the wilderness. And that character, the boy's name is Brian, and Brian survives on his own in the Canadian wilderness or the North American wilderness. And I always pictured myself in that scenario. I actually quite like those kind of survival stories. Like, I really love the Tomorrow When the War Began stories by John
Mm.
Marston, and I just find them really exciting. I mean, they're page turners,
Do you
but
think you would survive? Would you get to the end of the book if you were that character?
I'd survive. I'd make it. I'd make it
I
triumphantly.
always joke that I would be dead in a heartbeat. Um, and also, like, I'm like, if I was in the Middle Ages, I would not have survived to this age. I would have already been culled
Oh,
out by a disease or something.
yeah, yeah, that's a different story. I'm not sure I would survive the Middle Ages, but yeah. So that's a character. So that somewhat probably an obscure answer. You might have been expecting some fantastical one.
I love, yeah, out there answers. What are you reading right now?
Well, at the moment, I am in the middle of moving house. I'm in the spare bedroom at my very generous mum's place. So my reading has been a little bit disrupted. I think at the moment I'm reading American Scientist magazine, but I have been doing some research on the space age of the
Okay.
um, of the 1960s in particular, reading a lot of biography stuff of the astronauts during that time, because I have another writing project
I was
that
about to say, is this in preparation for something new?
it is, yeah. And so I'm doing a little bit of research on the biography of the original Mercury 7 astronauts. And that's been really interesting. So it's kind of like, it's funny with reading, sometimes you read full fictional fantasy stuff, which is fantastic escapism. And I actually need to get back to that. It's actually been a little while since I've been in that space. But then I go through a period where I read a lot of nonfiction stuff or biographies, and it's interesting, but it's sort of nice to have a bit of a break from reading facts.
Mm. Now, this is my favorite question. If you could invite five literary people to dinner, who would they be?
Again, another tricky question. Well, I would definitely invite Roald Dahl, who is no longer with us, but I would definitely invite him along if I could.
He'd be an interesting character to have at dinner.
He would. I think there's definitely some well, I think some different personalities. I don't know all the personalities of these people. I would invite Brian Selznick,
Hmm.
who wrote The Invention of Hugo Cabret. I'm very interested. I love that book. I love the movie Hugo. I I think I also love it because it's about the origins of visual effects from the
Mm.
original effects artist. So that's really exciting. George Méliès. And then possibly Neil Gaiman. I feel like Neil
Mm.
Gaiman's
You'd have a
extremely
good chat
popular.
with Neil Gaiman.
Would, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how he talks about, I mean, I I will admit I have watched his masterclass episode, but I
Mm.
really liked how he talked about. He said the process of writing your second draft is making it look like you knew what you were doing in the first draft, which is the first draft's the dog's breakfast of just vomited up
Yes.
ideas all over the
Yeah.
place. So you need to kind of mold the clay into some sort of idea of a sculpture. And I find a lot of those kind of analogies and that kind of discussion would be really stimulating.
Yeah, I think that
Who else
sounds
would
like
I
a
have?
very interesting dinner party.
I think I'd
Have you
have
got
Gary
to five?
Paulson. No, I've got three so far. So I'd have Gary Paulson, who wrote the Hatchet series, just because I'd want to quiz him on the ideas behind those
Mm.
stories. Um, and then the last person, I don't know, like I really love, I was mentioning biographies before. I also really love crime crime writing.
Yes.
And I love watching crime drama TV shows. Good ones. There's a lot of crap ones. I'm not
Yes.
talking about like American CSI type stuff. I'm
So
talking
you're
like
not talking like Snapped or My Neighbor is a Murderer.
Anne Cleeves, who wrote all
Yes.
the Vera series. I really love it. There's a series which my mum, I got to give credit to my mum, she got me onto Italian series called Inspector Montalbano, written by Andrea Camilleri.
I
Camilleri, yeah.
haven't seen that one.
Yeah, they're really theatrical, but they're really well written. And then also, I really love Foyle's War.
Oh,
Anthony
my
Hopkins.
mum loves that.
Oh, I'm like an oldie. I like all the oldie stuff, but but they're so well written, and like I actually really love Second World War stuff. So I'm just fascinated by that space. Um, yeah. So maybe one of them, or I don't know, maybe just myself. I've got all male people there except for Anne Cleves. Maybe I don't know, Marion Keyes. She'd be a hoot.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't read a lot of her books for the record, I will say that, but I know that she's a lot of fun.
Okay, so going back to the start of your writing journey, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, similar to what we were talking about a little earlier, I would probably say empower yourself earlier. Don't wait for validation from external world, whether it be that the publishing world or otherwise, because your voice will never be heard.
Mm, it is a challenge, but I'm a little bit conflicted sometimes because getting that email of a yes from a publisher is such a wonderful thing to receive. And it's only happened once to me so far, but I think there is that pursuit of validation, but it is like gold in terms of it's very rare.
Mm.
So I do love that there's authors out there that take control of their own destiny a little bit and go, okay, this isn't happening the way I wanted, but I can make it happen myself. And that might be what I need to do in the future because I'm starting to get a big gap between books.
Yeah.
um, I guess it really depends on your own grit as well, like
Yeah. I mean,
how much you want it and how much work you're prepared to put in.
yeah. I mean, I would certainly be really interested in exploring having, seeing what it's like to have a book published by a publisher. I mean, I've been pursuing that for some time. In the future, I would definitely be open to that. But also, if that doesn't happen, I just feel like, well, I'd quite happily keep pursuing the way that I have been doing
Mm.
things. Because you're still building building a following. I mean, I think that's one thing that's really challenging is like curating and building a following, because
Yes.
it's sort of a sense of obligation to do so through social media and that kind of thing, which I
And
understand.
it
But
doesn't really work in the same way now with social media because you only ever seem to reach within your own networks and they already know you. And it's like trying to break out
yeah,
into the greater. market. And I find that even with the podcast, I'm like, oh, this is hard work trying to just get people to know you exist. Um,
Yeah. No, absolutely. So yeah, that's challenging. That and I'm not, I mean, I dabble with social media just to sort of post fun stuff or things that I've made or created or done or I'm working on. And but I'm not like a fanatical poster.
no,
And
I
these
think you
days
have
with the
to,
algorithm, you just fall into obscurity if you're not working it every day. And that
yeah,
is
I think you just have to take it with a grain of salt. Like I'm very, I guess, aware that I'm not going to become like a TikTok influencer or and especially the further I approach middle age, I'm like, okay, I'm less the market that the people on social media are looking at in terms of going viral. So just realizing, okay, that may not be the way to share what I'm wanting to do, but there's other avenues as well.
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, I had so many people say, "Oh, you're writing this book for kids of this age. You know, you've got to get on TikTok." And I was just like, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. Just I can't do it. I know my limitations."
I'm too uncoordinated to do any of the dances, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what is next for you in terms of are you looking at turning Tuckshop Terrors into a series, or are you looking at more middle grade books
Do
in
you mean a
different
book series?
areas?
Do you
Yeah.
mean well, I have ideas for a potential sequel, which have been percolating, and I would just need time to write that and put it
Yes.
together. But that's been percolating for a little while. And I've actually got a couple of other screenplay ideas. So I kind of putting different hats on,
Yeah.
going from doing novel writing, prose
And
type stuff
are the
into
screenplays in this similar genre, or are they different?
they're completely different. One is a World War II migration story, and the other is a story to do with my grandfather and the space race, which
Okay,
I
so
can't remember.
that's what you're researching at the moment a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
it is. Yeah. I've got a head full of ideas. I mean, it's like they just they're spewing out my ears sometimes.
yeah.
I've got other ideas for other sci-fi things or fun things that just keep building up and accumulating. So as long as I keep a notebook, keep jotting down everything, have these like lists of spare parts that I can kind of build into something down the line. And it's just about, I think it's about making time. So it's like I have been extremely busy of late working on other material
Mm.
to make a living, but I need to make sure I get back to once I've finished moving house and all that kind of chaos. It's very disruptive. Once that's all out of the way, I'm going to get back to making time either early in the morning or late at night when the world goes to sleep and I can
Yes.
focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just carving that quiet time to be able to produce is can be really challenging for a writer, especially if you've got those other obligations
I
to
think so. I
yeah
think so.
I
I think if you just sort of go, well, I'm just going to write half a page, or I'm going to write just this much, and you get down, you kind of just put some thoughts down, and you go, oh, I wrote 3 pages. Okay, and that you just sort of keep doing that, and then you're like, wow, I've got a chapter. That's cool. And then
mm,
and then you start to, you know, chip away, and it does come to life slowly.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me
So
today,
much, I
Leo.
really
I've loved
appreciate
hearing about all your different hats.
it.
Um,
Which is
uh,
funny. I don't like wearing hats. Hats don't look good on me.
no, I'm the same. So for people who would like to order Tuckshop Terrors, where can they find it?
Well, Tuckshop Terrors is distributed by John Reed Books,
Mhm.
or for schools and libraries through Lamont Books, or if you there's so you can find it through select bookstores, and if bookstores don't have it, they can certainly order it in, or they could also order it directly from my website. If you just type in tuckshopterrors.com, you will get
Mhm.
there.
Oh,
Um,
amazing.
can
And
get
I
them
did
everything there.
love your, because I went and checked your website out, and the cursor is a little, is it a chip?
It's a chip.
A twisty maybe?
Yeah, it's a fried something or other.
And I this is really embarrassing, but I did have to take the chip to your main character's mouth. That was like, oh, I have to feed him the chip.
Hey,
Um,
we've all done it.
and I did like that your character also sort of moves out a little bit on the screen as well. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is giving me a bit of entertainment.
Well, I just wanted to have like the reason why I say if you type in Tuckshop Terrors, it will do a redirect to my webpage, which is
Yeah.
leobaker.net. So if it does a redirect, don't freak out. But it gets to the landing page of Tuckshop Terrors. It's just a place where people can read what the book's about and get a bit of a sense and learn where you can get the ebook as well, if that's what you
Hmm.
prefer. It's got links to where you can purchase the ebook. And you can purchase it from that site there. But you can also just go to your bookstore. And I do believe in supporting your local bookstore. So
Yeah. Um,
options.
Local bookstores are the best. We've got some fantastic ones here in Brisbane, and I haven't had a chance to get down to Victoria and check out some of the locals down there. But
Is it
was born in
but independent
Victoria,
one?
so
Oh, cool.
yeah. All right. Thank you so much,
All
Leo.
right. Thanks, Guy.
Best
Really
of
appreciate
luck
it.
with Tuckshop Terrors and your future
Terrific.
projects.
Thanks so much.
Totally Lit is an independent podcast. You can help support us to continue to chat with wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. You can also make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. For those of you who know me, I'm kind of a caffeine addict, so you can keep me fueled with caffeine, and this will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with our listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or on social media. You can find me under Totally Lit Podcast on all the socials. Have you checked out the Totally Lit Writing Community group on Facebook yet? It's a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches, and latest projects. Jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.